Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavanto Punah Punah. Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Balamindriyani cha sarvani Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam Maham Brahma Nirakuryam Mamam Brahma Nirakaroda Anirakaranamastu Nirakaranam Me Astu Tadatmani Upanishatsu Dharmaste Mai Santu Te Mai Santu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Yes, Satyena Ativadati. He is called Ativadi in the real sense, who speaks transcending, who speaks as Satya. Satyena Ativadati, not through Satya, as Satya. He becomes Satya. Then whatever he says is Satya. And here by Satya is meant the Paramarthing of Satyam, which is the Adhisthana of everything. In that sense, you can say Adhishthanam transcends the Adhyaropa. So the whole Jagat is Adhyaropa, meaning Mithya, and Satyam is the Adhishthanam. In that sense, Satyam transcends everything. So as long as one is confined to the Vyavahara, Adhyaropa, giving that the reality, so long the Satya also will be only relative, and therefore it will not transcend, meaning that it will remain within the realm of relative things also, and therefore will not experience the freedom, because a relative thing is always dependent upon something else. You do not become independent. Satyena Adivadati, recognizing that the truth is that which transcends all of this. And when you identify with that, when you discover that, that is what your true nature is, that you are consciousness, upon which everything beginning from Nama, Vak, all of these are superimposed in the Vedantic language. Meaning that what is because of the truth, or because of the Satya, because of consciousness. Whereas consciousness is not because of anything. Satya is not because of anything. Whatever is because Satya is, Asti, Bhati, Priya is. And therefore, when one recognizes oneself as Satya, as Sat or consciousness, then automatically he transcends everything, meaning he is no more limited by anything. And therefore, as Satya, Ativadati, he is a real Ativadi, meaning that he is no more confined to the relative, the limited world. He has crossed or transcended all the limitations. But transcending doesn't mean going beyond, transcending being oneself. Because the self already transcends everything. The Asti, Bhati, Priyam already transcends the names and forms. You already are transcendent. The self or consciousness is transcendent, meaning you don't have to do something to transcend. We have to know that Satya is my essential nature. I want to be Ativadi, Satyena Ativadi. I want to be Ativadi as Satya. Satyena Ativadaniti. Then he Narada, you must know what Satya is. Meaning Satya is something to be known, not something to be achieved or acquired, is something to be known. See, knowledge presupposes existence of what you want to know. Presupposes experience. So if Satyam has to be known, that means Satyam is already experienced. You cannot know something that is not already experienced. Only when you experience the apple falling that you know the reason for it, namely the gravity. Therefore, knowledge presupposes experience, understand? Otherwise, there is no desire to know also. If the experience is not there, even jignasa is not there. There cannot be jignasa or desire to know for something that is totally unknown to me, because that doesn't create any kind of desire to know, because it has no role to play in my life. If there is something that I never experienced, some black hole, etc., then it doesn't become, it doesn't mean anything to me, doesn't play any role in my life, does not contribute anything to me. And therefore, the desire to know that does not arise. In a scientist, that desire may arise when he discovers this and realizes that's the reason of. So that is a different way. Here we are talking about jignasa, that we desire to know something that is important to us, something that matters to us. For example, while discussing in the Chhandogyopanishad, they talk of Turiyam, the force, the transcendental truth. Now, if the truth transcends, meaning that it does not become, it is not an object of experience for me, there will be no desire to know because it doesn't matter to me. If the so-called Turiya, the force, is experienced by me, but not correctly understood by me, then only there will be desire to know that. Bhashyakara raises this question. It's called Turiya, the force, the transcendental reality. The reality transcends this life, which God is someplace there in the heaven, which doesn't form part of my life. It doesn't matter to me whether God is there or not. Then knowing that would be an academic thing. But if God plays constantly a role in my life, because it pervades my life, because everything that I do is influenced by that it is important in my life, then I will want to know that. So Satya also becomes the object of desire for knowledge if Satya is relevant to me. And it is most relevant, it happens to be my own self. And it happens to be consciousness, happens to be self-revealing, happens to be always experienced. We don't have to create an experience in our life. You don't have to experience the truth because it's already experienced, because it is myself, it is self-revealing. It cannot but be experienced. So I have to understand what I am experiencing. Meaning, I have to understand what I am. Javijijñāsitavyam satyam bhago vijijñāsaiti. So how do you know the truth? Yatha yada vai vijanati ata satyam vadati. One speaks truth when one knows truth. Meaning that to become ativadi means one who speaks truth. Truth supposedly transcends everything, therefore transcending, speaking the transcendental, speaking truth. So one speaks truth only when one knows truth. Yada vai vijanati ata satyam vadati. In one's life, one speaks truth when one knows truth. And that goes even for the Vyavaharika Satyam also, that when we know what the thing is, then only what we speak is truth. Na vijanan Satyam vadati. Unless Satyam is known, until then I cannot talk about Satyam. I cannot become Satyam unless Satyam is known, or I do not know that I am Satyam. So here the teacher says that one cannot speak truth unless one knows the truth. In this instance, truth happens to be myself. That unless the truth of Satyam is known as myself, I become that. So then what I am is truth. Then what I said, everything is manifestation of truth. Vadanam does not confine only in speaking. Whatever I do, whatever I express is all nothing but expression of truth. If I have become truth, which I know and I become truth. And fortunately, when I am truth, you are also truth. That is a good thing. The truth is not known that I am truth and you are false. I am Brahman, you are all stupid. No, everything is Brahman. What is Brahman? That is a saving grace, because if I am Brahman and you are not Brahman, Jagat is not Brahman, and there will always be a duality. Then I cannot get total satisfaction by being free to know that you are all bound and you are not Brahman, you are limited. Because you stand contradictory to me, and therefore there is always a question in my mind as to what will they do. Like the very wealthy person is surrounded by hutmans of the poor people, and they're always looking at him. He's always aware that these fellows don't have what I have, so they always have their eyes on what I have. I am Brahman, you're not Brahman. That doesn't make me comfortable, understand? Although we may feel that when I am something, you are not that I am, but that will be only short-lived. The real satisfaction comes when I know that I am all right and you are also all right. Because if you are not all right, then likely that I will not be all right also because of that. I am Satyam, you are Satyam. What is this Satyam? So there is nothing but Satyam. So what I speak, what I do, what I am is Satyam. So, na avijanan Satyam vadati. Without knowing Satyam, without knowing the truth, meaning without knowing the self, one does not speak truth. By speaking, so not only words. What I express momentarily is what I am speaking. Whether I speak, whether I do, whether I walk, whether I talk, whatever I do, is nothing but manifestation of myself. In whatever I do, there is manifestation of myself. And if I'm a human being, then I speak as a human being, I walk as a human being, I look at human being, I hear as human being. Is it not so? If I'm Brahman, then I walk as Brahman, I talk as Brahman, I think as Brahman. That is called speaking. So speaking is becoming. Vijanan eva satyam vadati. Knowing satyam. And the only way satyam can be known has to be known as myself. If satyam also is known as something other than me, then if I stand apart from satyam, in contradiction to satyam, then satyam also is limited, and what is limited cannot be satyam. Satyam has to be all inclusive, cannot exclude anything. Vijnanam, so therefore, he Narada, you should know satyam. Vijnanam te vijignyasitavyam. It's interesting. Knowledge has to be desired, Vijignyasita. We must have a desire for, you must have a desire for knowledge. Vijnanam, so you should know the knowledge in a particular way. Meaning that what is meant by you should know knowledge is you should know how knowledge takes place. What should you do for knowledge to take place? That's what you should know. Vijnanam vijignyasitavyam. One has to desire to know the knowledge, vijignyasa. Desire to know. Vijnanam vijignyasitavyam. One should desire to know especially the knowledge. What do you mean by know? You should know the knowledge. Meaning, you should know how the knowledge takes place. So in each subsequent stage you told that you should know, because that thing does not take place on its own, is yatna sadhyam. That knowledge has to be acquired, has to be attained by effort, not just any effort, by specific effort. Any given thing always calls for a specific effort to achieve that. For achieving anything, you require a special effort which is conducive for achieving that. If you want to go to Kashi, then you travel in northern direction. If you want to Tamil Nadu, southern direction, etc. Similarly also, what is meant by the knowledge has to be known, meaning that, he Narada, you should know how the knowledge takes place. So you will do what is necessary for the knowledge to take place. Knowledge takes place. Although it is said that you should know, knowledge is not Purusha Tantram, it is Vastu Tantram. And therefore, even though it is said you should know, what it means that knowledge should take place, is it not so? Or that what you want to know should reveal itself to you. This we said earlier, that any knowledge takes place when that thing reveals itself to me. Anything. Even a part also becomes known to me if the part reveals itself to me. If the part is hidden in darkness, then I see it does not reveal itself to me, part is not known. No, Swami, you are illumining the part, then you know the part. Either I know the part because I illumine, or the part is known because part reveals itself to me. Meaning that we need the grace of that thing, for us to know. Knowledge, when takes place after a lot of inquiry and a lot of thinking, you can say, I knew, or the thinking created the condition for that to reveal itself. If Newton came to know the law of gravity, is it he who knew, or that thing revealed itself to him? If he had the freedom, he would have known right away, but he had to struggle for years together to dwell upon, deliberate upon that, dwell upon that. And we all know sometimes we struggle and struggle to get an answer to a problem, and it just happens. Then you know that it has happened. It's not that I have known, but it has somehow I know it. Anyway, the point is that the knowledge has to take place, and all we can do is to do what is necessary, create a necessary condition for the knowledge to take place. Vijnanam bhago vijijnaseti. I desire to know the knowledge. Meaning, I desire to know how the knowledge, what should I do for the knowledge to take place. So at every stage is yatna sadhya. Nothing happens by itself, otherwise there is no need on your part to know or make an effort. Now we have a series of steps here. One leading to the other, or one preceded by the other, a second one. So now it is a sequence here. That this happens when that happens, that happens when the other one happens, that happens when the other one happens. Understand, this is a different kind of a sequence than what we had earlier. The nama is there when vak is there, that is there when mana is there, that is there when sankalpa is there, etc. etc. There is a cause and effect relationship. So, here also we have, but it's not that they are different things. It is one leads to the other. So now the next passage tells us, the passage 23 on the page 7. Yada vai manute asavijanati na amatva vijanati matva eva vijanati matistveva vijijñāsitavya iti matim bhagavo vijijñāsa iti. Yada vai manute atha vijanati. When one does mananam, which is translated reflections. So mananam. Bhashyakara says, so manute matihi mananam tarkaha. Tarka means reasoning. So yada vai manute, when does knowledge take place? When one follows a reasoning in one's mind, which is what we call vichara. Is translated as inquiry, but what vichara is a deliberation upon what it is that you want to know. As it is for anybody also, for any scientist also, that when he wants to know something, he deliberates upon that. Here the mananam also presupposes shravanam also. Although later on, but then mananam presupposes shravanam. That knowledge takes place, atmavara drashtavya, shrutavya, darshanam, or knowledge of the self takes place by shravanam, meaning by listening to the teacher. The knowledge takes place by shravanam or during shravanam. What is shravanam? Shravanam is not merely listening, because when the teacher is unfolding something, then there is also a dynamic involvement on the part of the listener or the student also, in whose mind a corresponding line of thinking or contemplation takes place. So as the teacher unfolds, in a corresponding thought flow takes place in the mind of the student, which thought flow is conducive to knowledge, not just any thought flow. A thought flow which is conducive for knowledge, that thought flow is called vichara. And in Vedanta, what is vichara is nothing but deliberating upon the meaning of this statement of the Upanishad. What teacher does is he unfolds the meaning of these statements of Upanishads. Athato Brahma Jignasa. So Brahma or Atma is subject matter of the Upanishad. Upanishad means self-knowledge. And therefore, what the teacher does is unfold the self. How does self unfolded? By unfolding the meaning of the statements of the Upanishad. Like this here. So what the teacher does for us is, he unfolds, explains the meaning of the text, and a corresponding deliberation takes place in the mind of the student. If that does not take place, then this process doesn't become effective. Shravanam produces knowledge when a thought flow which is conducive for knowledge takes place in the mind of the student, which happens because the teacher unfolds the thing in a certain manner. Unfolds the statement of Upanishad. Tattvamasi, that's a statement. What is Tat, what is Tvam, what is Asi? So these meanings are unfolded with reasoning. And he says Mananam Tarkaha, because our mind understands by reasoning. We already discussed this. When we are told something, when does the understanding takes place? When my mind subjects what is being told to the reasoning according to me, and by that reasoning, then I understand what is being told. Even these sentences that are said, you understand the meaning of these sentences when the mind is actively involved in understanding the meanings of these words, meaning of the sentences, and what is intended by these sentences, what is the targeted meaning or what is the intended meaning. All of this happens in your mind. And then only the understanding takes place of what the Swami is talking about. So understand that Mananam takes place in our mind. While Shravanam, while we are listening to the teacher, in our mind, this Mananam, meaning this logical thinking, takes place to understand the meaning of what is told to us. Because intellect can only understand when it finds it reasonable, it finds it consistent, it finds it logical. Otherwise, so many questions arise in the evening. What is said is not logical. Oh, whatever, that's what the questioner thinks, and that's right, like one is thinking. So we get stuck. What did Swami, why do you say that? How can you say that? How can you say that Manaha means, Swami, Mana means Manaha, Buddhi, Chittam, Ahankara, Manaha. How does Manaha means intention? That's not what he said there. Chittam, Swamiji, we understand Chittam as the Anusandhanat, is the faculty of memory. And you say Chittam means the ability to comprehend something. How is it so? Anyway, what I'm saying is that we already think what Chittam is, and that's how it should be, and that's what we expect. When somebody tells something quite different from that, we either get confused. And since you are all good people, so therefore you don't question what the Swami is saying. So you try to understand. Otherwise, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Very often people go to listen and say, he doesn't know Swamiji. Why? Because he's not saying what I think. He's good. Why? Because this is what I believe. So very often we go to get confirmation of what we already think is, and not necessarily to learn something. But learning means subjecting my present understanding to also a question that will come to it. Next, we'll come to that. But this, so this yada vai manute atha vijanate. So even though we study, you either study by on your own, that also is part of Shravanam. But here also in the book there is an unfoldment. And in the written words also the teacher is unfolding. But still that does not replace a live listening to the teacher. And therefore by listening is meant live. Hopefully not online. But that's the next best. Online because you see our Swami didn't like the use of certain words, So, but when you are here, there is an energy, so energy, vibration, so there is an allergy about all those words, which the world uses because of yoga. This is a place of yoga, that of energy, vibrations, vibes, etc. And, so we also don't use. But you can't dismiss vibes, in the world that there is no such thing at all. You can't say there is no energy. So there is a certain environment when you are in presence of someone. That there is an impact of a live person, live talking, live presence. When there is contact with the eyes, when there is a contact, that communication has a different quality. Is it not so? I hope so. That I'm looking at the screen and talking that I do, and the people think Swami is looking at us. But you should know that he is looking at me. It's a different thing. Anyway, so Shravanam, anyway, in those days, of course, there was no other way than our going to a teacher, wherever he was in some remote place. As I said, the teachers are now coming to us. And so it is very convenient to us to be where we are and still get the benefit of this Shravanam. But those days you had to go where the teachers were, and they were in inaccessible places, some forest, some place. So you can't go home. Swamiji, I'll go away for 2 days and come back and stuff like that. Then you can't come back. It takes so many days to go and so many days to come, and by then, Anyway, so that is not relevant here. But, so Shravanam is what the unfoldment of the teacher, and hereby mananam tarkaha is meant what the corresponding thought process that takes place in the mind of the student. Because the human intellect understands only by reasoning, and so of course the teacher unfolds something according to some reasoning, which reasoning also follows in the mind of the listener, and that's how the knowledge takes place. So knowledge will take place as a result of reasoning. That's called inquiry. It's called a vichara. Kind of vichara or reasoning that is directed towards understanding what the teacher is saying. Matihi, mananam, tarkaha, says Bhashyakara. Mantavya vishaya adara. Now that's an interesting thing. Mantavya vishaya adara. Also, when will you listen? When you listen, then when will you apply yourself? You apply yourself, when will you have... So there has to be a harmony or a tuning up between the teacher and the student, which again we'll talk about. But then, so says Bhashyakara here, Mantavya Vishaya Adaraha. Adaraha means a love for what it is that I want to know. Mantavya Vishaya means object of thinking, object of deliberation. A love for the object of deliberation. So that also an additional requirement. is not simply dry thinking or dry deliberation. The bhakti also, in Bhashyakara's word, bhakti also is involved in the sense that what I want to know is something very dear to me, something important to me, something valuable to me. Therefore, there is adara, there is love. Say you want to know the truth, and that's the deliberation, targat, manavam takes place. That deliberation, logical deliberation, takes place with the love for what it is that you want to know. So, that I think usually for the one who is committed to knowledge, there has to be commitment means love. And therefore everybody, whoever it is who wants to know something and is devoted, committed to the knowledge, has to have love for what he wants to know. If that is not there, then suppose your experiment, etc., is not successful, you just let it go. No. If not, doesn't work out one, second time, third time, they continue their experiments because he is committed to knowledge. Why? Because it is important to him. What I want to know is important to me. And therefore there is love for that. And therefore I am thinking about it, reflecting upon that with a love, with commitment. That is called mananam, according to Bhashyakara. Not just logical thinking, but then the thinking which is accompanied by the love for what it is that I am thinking about. Love in this case of Satyam. So Satya, the truth that you want to know, should also become the object of your love. It's not just dry process. So love or bhakti is always involved. Vedantis may not like bhakti or something like that, but without that you can't do anything. Therefore, matisva vijignyasitavyayati, mating bhagavo vijignyasayati. Therefore, he Narada, you should now know. So I want to do mananam. So mananam is the cause for knowledge. Therefore, you should do mananam. You should know mananam. Now, matista vijignyasitavya, you must desire to know mati, you must desire to know mananam. Meaning, you should desire to know how mananam takes place. What should be required? What kind of disposition of mind is required? What preparation of mind is required for the mananam to take place? Shravanam is there. Thank God, that's not our effort. So that is why Shravana is the first thing. Shravanam, Kirtanam. Shravana is the very first thing because there you are getting something very prepared. Your cooked thing is given to you. To us, that is why the Shravanam. So no effort is required on our part except the mananam. That effort is required on our part. And matim bhago vijignyaseti. Oh, Venerable Sir, I want to know the mananam. Meaning that I want to know how mananam takes place. How to do mananam. What should I do in order for mananam to take place in my mind? I'll do mananam. You can't do that unless the right disposition of mind is there. So nothing happens automatically. It is all yatna sadhyam. You have to make the right effort to cultivate a disposition of mind for mananam to take place. For that mind to carry out that deliberation with love for the object of knowledge, for that kind of thinking to take place, something is required. So, then the next, we are told here. So what do we require for mananam? The logical thinking with love for the object of knowledge, or love for truth. For that to happen, what should be done? What is required? So next passage says, यदा वै श्रद्धाति अथ मनुते न अश्रद्धधन् मनुते श्रद्धत एव मनुते श्रद्धात्वेव विजिज्ञासितव्या इति श्रद्धां भगवो विजिज्ञास इति. So what kind of mind do we require for manana to take place? The mind that possesses Shraddha. Yadavai Shraddhathati. When one has Shraddha. Translated as faith by Shraddha, Astikya Buddhi Shraddha. And you know very well the definition of Shraddha, right from Tattvabodha onwards, Shastrasya Guru Vakyasya Satya Buddhya Dharana Sa Shraddha Kathita Sadbhihi Yaya Vastu Palabhyate. That's called Shraddha. By which one attains the knowledge. Shraddhavan Labhate Jnanam. So Lord Krishna raised Shraddha to the highest value by saying that Shraddhavan Labhate Jnanam. One who possesses Shraddha gains knowledge. So when would mananam take place? Reflection can take place, logical thinking can take place. When would that mananam result in knowledge? When it is done with Shraddha. Astikya Buddhi Shraddha. So here, this is a standard definition, Astikya Buddhi. But that is why Shraddha in Vedanta is defined as Astiti Buddhi, that whatever the teacher says is true. Again, that you cannot will. But if you possess a mind, fortunately you possess a mind which mind says, yes, what the teacher says is right, what the scriptures say is right, or what the teacher says is in keeping with scriptures, and what the scriptures say is right. If that is the response that my mind gives, we cannot will that. You cannot, yes Swami, I have Shraddha, I believe. You can't believe. Belief has to happen. Shraddha has to happen. What is Shraddha? That my mind responds with this attitude that what I am being told, yes, that is exactly what it is. And what I am told also is in keeping with the scriptures, and that is what it is. Tattvamasi, you are Brahman. I don't believe, Swamiji. How can I be Brahman? Now question is one thing and questioning is different thing. Shraddha means a state of mind. I don't question the teacher. Asking question is one thing, questioning is a different thing. Akshepa is questioning. Jignasa is asking a question. Akshepa is questioning what the teacher says. So what is it? Sometimes our mind questions. I don't think he knows what he's talking about. I don't think that's right. That cannot be. Sometimes the mind may respond in this manner. If that is how it is, then I am not in tune with the teacher. So Shraddha creates a tuning up between the teacher and the student. Then they are on the same page, as they say, or on the same frequency and wavelength. So that what is told right away is received by me. Puja Swami used to use the word sponge. Like sponge, they absorb. Says, the students there are like sponge. So happy with some group of students, like sponge. I say, and it just gets absorbed. Because there is nothing that obstructs that absorption. So Shraddha eliminates any possible obstructions between me and what I am told. Primarily, You see, why this Shraddha business is only required? Swami, nobody requires Shraddha when you go to study science. You don't have to have Shraddha. In fact, they will question the Shraddha, question everything. Here, don't question. Looks like this is all. You are brainwashing your students, Swamiji. Because they are accustomed to questioning. And here you say, you should not question. I should not say you should not question. That questioning should not arise in mind. We can't but question, but that my mind does not question. Now, the reason why I question, the reason why this communication is different from the communication from a teacher of physics or chemistry is that is objective science, and I have no axe to grind as far as object is concerned. About gravity, I have no opinion about it. Nor do I have an agenda about it. So I don't mind accepting gravity as it is. And so my mind is open as far as objects are concerned because I am not concerned about them. I have no free opinion. And I don't have any agenda. If it is this way, then it's all right. That way also is all right. But here, the subject matter is myself. Which self? The self about whom I am entertaining all kinds of complexes. To the physics teacher, I go with a clean slate. To the Vedantic teacher, we don't go with clean slate. In a way, clean slate, they say, is because I'm not exposed to 1500 people and all kinds of confusions are there. But I don't go with clean slate because I go with already preconceived notion about myself. That's why this is so difficult. The self-knowledge, they say, is very difficult. Should not be because myself. But then that is why it is difficult, because I already think I know who I am. Not only that, but we are what we are, therefore we are quite proud of what we think we know. We judge ourselves based on what we know, and therefore I want what I know to be, to be validated rather than questioned. And here, what I know about myself is all wrong. And what the teacher says is quite different from what I take myself to be. Everything that I know is wrong. We already know, or we already have opinions about the self, Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara. This is the nature of the intellect. It is the Adhyavasayatmika Antahkara. So it is nature of intellect to judge whatever it is that comes in contact with. They say don't be judgmental. You have to be judgmental. That is what intellect does. So first thing I come in contact with myself. I have all kinds of judgments about myself. I can't avoid it. And then I come in contact with the world with all kinds of self-judgment, and then I judge the world, which is also going to be wrong. So everything that I know is wrong. About myself, about the world, and about God. I have come with that wealth, that's called ignorance. Ignorance is not simply the absence of knowledge, which is the case with physics and chemistry and so forth and so on. It's just absence of knowledge. Here, it's not absence of knowledge. It is false knowledge. And therefore, it is the cessation or elimination of the Brahma. Brahma means false knowledge, false perception. That's what makes it very difficult. Because I'm convinced about something and you say that's wrong. Wait a minute. Then I should have at least respect for you that you know more than I do. Secondly, that you know what you're talking about and that what you're saying is right. All of this is involved for me to even lend my ear to you. Therefore, listening to teacher is of a different, calls for a different disposition of mind. There is not surrender. I don't surrender in the sense that it's not that I just absorb or I swallow what I am told. Vedantins don't want that. Nobody wants us to swallow what we are told. What we are told, we should subject to the reasoning and then only accept it if it's found reasonable. If I don't understand or don't agree with what the teacher says, it's quite all right. Except that when I do not agree, I don't dismiss what the teacher says. I will keep it in abeyance. I will wait for it and see, someday I will understand. If what I believe is contrary to what teacher says, I question what I believe rather than what the teacher says. That's called Shraddha. That he knows, and the way he's talking about myself, which is quite different from what I think I am, let me see whether do I have the valid reason to believe what I believe about myself. Or do I have valid reason to think that world is like this? Is it my knowledge or is it just taken for granted? So what I think is my knowledge is simply taken for granted. Taken for granted as to who I am. That I am a human being. Who told you that? I know. How do you know? I know I am human being. Well, this is human. The body is human being. You presuppose that you are the body and then you are saying you are a human being. Are you body or a possessor of body? No, that's how the teacher will lead us. But we have just taken for granted that I am the body. I am the mind. That is called ignorance. Ignorance is not simply absence of knowledge, it is all this wrong, false knowledge, which is most dangerous. If I just did not know, this is not a big problem. But knowing wrongly is a big problem. And that is why knowing rightly alone can make me free from all the problems of sorrow that comes from wrong knowledge. Tarishogam Atmavid. Knower of the self means one who knows the self as the self is. I know the self also. You cannot but know the self because self is self-effulgent. That is why in deep sleep when I do not know the self, there is a great relief from this, this knowledge creates a tremendous amount of conflicts in my mind and lots of complexes. It is my knowledge about myself that causes all my conflicts, although I may blame somebody else and so forth, but then anyway, that's a great relief in the deep sleep when I just don't know. Not that that time problem is solved, but at least there's no problem. Not awareness of problem. So here, this mananam means putting into, or manam here means that putting to scrutiny all my present conclusions about myself, about Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. That's what Vedanta does. Vedanta, Puja Swami just talks about the realities of life. What reality about myself? These three things make up my life. Myself, Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara. And therefore, Vedanta talks about what's the reality of the self, what's the reality of the world, what's the reality of Ishvara. So I mean, if you don't know, what does it matter? You know, unfortunately, that is why it's a wrong knowledge. Therefore, right knowledge is required. If I did not have any knowledge at all, they don't talk about what is the, some stars and planets and this and that, and they, even if you don't know, it doesn't matter, because you have no opinion about them. Therefore, yada vai shraddha thati, when there is shraddha, an implicit faith in my mind that what I am told is what it is, then it enables me to question my own conclusions rather than questioning what the teacher says. And that is how I can progressively become free from the wrong conclusions. That's what is called knowledge, is shedding of ignorance. Ignorance in the form of false conclusions about myself, about the world, about Ishvara. Because each of these false conclusions is a cause of sorrow. And that's only cause of sorrow. Yada vai shraddhati athamanute. With this shraddha, then when mananam takes place, then when I listen to the teacher, and then when in my mind that logical process takes place, with shraddha, and then also with adar or love for what it is that I want to know, then that mananam becomes effective, then says yatha manute atha vijanati. That mananam then results into knowledge. That's called, in Vedanta they call it vichara. Often translated as inquiry, but inquiry is a good word. But vichara is not inquiry of something that I independently carry out. It is vichara, which is simply understanding the meaning of the statements of Upanishad. That's what is vichara. Not just sitting in the armchair and thinking about what is what. That kind of philosophizing is not what is meant here. Vichara means inquiring into, understanding the meaning of Tattvamasi. That's one thing, that's all. All these big voluminous thing is only one sentence, Tattvamasi. Or Aham Brahmasmi. For that so much is said. Right away say you are Brahman. They may say that, but I think Brahman means what I may have some idea what Brahman is. I may come to that conclusion. So much unfoldment is required to progressively help me become free from my present notions. Yada vai shraddhadhati athamanute. So for mananam to result in a knowledge, it should be done with a mind which enjoys shraddha, which is astikya buddhi, where there is implicit faith. Now that also cannot be. No. Yes, Swami, I have shraddha. You can't say your shraddha is not because of will. You cannot will. Any of these things cannot be willed. They have to happen. And you have to make them happen. So yatna sadhyam. An appropriate yatna is required for that to happen. Appropriate effort is required for mananam to happen, which is shraddha. Again, therefore this na shraddha toya vijignyasitavyayati. Therefore, Sanat Kumara says that you must inquire into shraddha. Shraddham bhago vijignyaseti. Says Narada understands, and so understand that he keeps on, he just doesn't ask questions, now he knows up to this point. He has done what is required to be done then he goes further. Otherwise it all just piles up, It's not that he piles up all the information. He's not piling up information. He is progressing in knowledge. So when Narada says, it's not right away he says, yes, I heard, now what's next? That's not so. He puts, he makes the effort in order to make it a reality for him. So now he has Shraddha. Or he wants Shraddha, he recognizes the meaning of Shraddha, what is required for Shraddha to be there. Shraddham bhagavo vijignyaseti. Venerable Sir, I wish to know Shraddha, meaning I wish to know how Shraddha takes place. Because I can't will Shraddha. I can't will bhakti. Bhakti karo, do bhakti. What do you mean bhakti? They think doing something is all bhakti. Action is not bhakti. Bhakti is the feelings that you have within yourself that you can't will. You can't will love. Love this person. I wish I could. It has to happen, is it not so? So much has to be done. You date, you meet when and they give all kinds of things that have to be done for a period of time for love to slowly happen. If you could will love, that would be wonderful. I love you, I love everybody. If that happens, that's wonderful. But we know how love has to happen. Shraddha has to happen. And for love to happen, you do what is necessary for creating condition for love to happen in the mind. And therefore you create acquaintance, and then you please this one, that one pleases you, etc., etc., My knowledge is theoretical, but still, So now, next step is, what is to be done for Shraddha to take place? We'll continue with that. Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.